about the passion for what you do that drives you, that makes you go out and do it. And so those people are just being thrown out and they're going to be left on the shelf, and with all the other financial worries, possibly not going to find any other employment with their particular specialities, which is a shame. But that's a beautiful image. That's the first ever image of the Earth and the Moon. I'll go back and go through them one at a time in a bit. And all of these images we'd never have had without space technology. That's the entire universe. That's a deep field image of the entire observable universe. How cool is that? If it doesn't make a shiver go down your spine, then I don't think we're really properly alive. If you can look at an image like that and think nothing of it. Does anyone know what that one is? The Horsehead Nebula in Orion. Okay? The Earth and the Moon. They look right next to each other, but they're not. And this is the shadow of the Moon during an eclipse. And there's how tiny we really are. So, my argument is this. Space has brilliant returns. There's a massive payback of technology, and I could list hundreds and hundreds of things if I just stood here and listed all of the technological returns, just as a verbal list one after the other. We'd be here for about 3 hours. My brain's not brilliant enough to be able to remember all of those things in a list one after the other, but there are thousands of them. We save people's lives, and when you go home tonight and go to bed, I'll almost guarantee you'll be sleeping on a NASA invention, because memory foam, which they now make pillows and mattresses out of, is a NASA invention. Your car seats are full of it. When you get in your car, well, hopefully you're not all driving home because you're all drinking, but when you get in your car and you think, oh, that's nice and comfy, that's memory foam. When you go to bed at night and you lay your head on a nice comfy pillow, that's memory foam. And that was a NASA invention. You might think, why did they make that? What on earth do they want a big block of squidgy foam for? Well, again, when you're in zero gravity, you just float around and bounce off everything. So they developed this foam to cushion the astronauts. You really can't afford for an astronaut to hurt themselves when they're up in space. There's no 999 call that can be made when you're 80 miles up, or in the case of the guys that went to the moon, 240,000 miles away. So, to me, space isn't an issue of money, it's not an issue of politics, it's fundamentally an issue of being a living, sentient being. It's our obligation to go out and discover, and if we don't, I think we're doomed. And there's one last thing I want to show you. You have to give me a second, and it's not a very good image. I'll see if I can find it. And there's two images here that are really, really important images. That's the first one. It's the... Stop, go back. It's called Earthrise. The Apollo 8 astronauts, who were the first people to go to the moon, they didn't land, they went to the moon, they did several orbits, and then they came back again. It was a dry run for the moon landing. And when they went round the moon, it was Christmas Eve, 1968, December the 24th, 1968, and they went round the moon, and the first two orbits, they were facing backwards, so they couldn't see anything, and they only had a couple of tiny little windows anyway. The third orbit, they rotated the capsule round, and they saw the Earth. Something that a lot of people aren't aware of is you can't watch the Earth rise on the moon, because the moon is tidally locked to the rotation of the Earth. That's why we always see the same face of it. But when you're in orbit, you can watch the Earth rise over the moon, and they couldn't be bothered looking at the moon when they saw the Earth, and they all rushed for their cameras, and one of them found a colour camera, and he took that photograph. It's the most reproduced photograph in the history of mankind. That photograph was so amazing. It's not a particularly brilliant photograph from photographic standards, but it's what the subject is. It instigated a thing called Earth Day that's been celebrated every year ever since. That was the birth of the environmental movement. Another thing that space does for us is that all of these satellites we've got going around don't just send phone signals around and the internet signals around and give us timing signals for GPS. They also monitor what's happening on that little blue-green marble floating in space. We can watch glaciers recede, we can watch floods and hurricanes. The recent disasters, natural disasters that have happened in various parts of the world, in order to find the best route when roads have been taken out and bridges have been taken out to get emergency supplies, they use satellite imaging to find the best route to get the emergency supplies in. So the payback financially and to humanity is immeasurable. The other picture I want to show you is this. I think it was the next one. It's a very grainy image. When Voyager was about to leave the point where we could no longer send it a signal to tell it what to do anymore, Carl Sagan, who's on several advisory councils, he actually worked on the advisory council for NASA to write the book on what we would do if we actually contacted aliens. There really is a manual on what to do if we ever made contact with an alien species. And Carl Sagan was on the panel that wrote that manual. And at his request, this is how much power he's got, if you like, or influence he's got with NASA. At his request, when he became aware of the fact that Voyager was about to go beyond the boundary of communication, he suggested that Voyager turn around and take a picture of where it had been. That little blue-green spot, it's not even a whole pixel on the image of the camera. It's an interpolated, it's 0.13 of a pixel. Interpolated from all the others is us, taken from 4 billion miles away. That's not science fiction, that's not an artist's impression, that is the whole of humanity, of history, of poetry, of music, of everything that everyone has ever done, is that tiny little blue-green dot. Thank you.